Thank you so much for having me, and Juan, thank you for being here. Last year, I spent a large part of the year investigating Canada's migrant worker program, spending time in Mexico with families who participated in the program, and spending time with workers here in Canada on the farms that they come to every year, spending time in bunkhouses. And that was really the first place that I thought about back in February, March, when the pandemic hit. And my work since then has really focused on how these longstanding issues around unsafe living and working conditions have coalesced to really devastate the migrant worker community here in Canada, and over 1,000 workers testing positive for coronavirus. And I think Canadians are more and more starting to understand the role that these workers play in our economy. But I think what's harder for Canadians to understand is what are the dynamics that bring workers here to begin with. And so Juan, I was hoping you could tell us a little bit about what the forces driving migration out of Mexico look like.
I think these forces have evolved over the years. Curiously, 30 years ago, when I was a teenager, I worked in literacy programs, going to rural Mexico to teach people to read and write. And I went to a town in the state of Tlaxcala, Pipiyola. And it was funny because you could really have like a social divide inside the town between the members of the community that were part of this Canadian program and the people that were not able to participate in the program. And they were called the Canadians. Obviously, they were from Tlaxcala, but it was like the nickname in the town. And you could just by walking outside your house, you could spot who was a Canadian and who wasn't. You could see like the houses were bigger, they were painted outside, they have refrigerators, TV. It was a huge social divide, and it was also a big aspiration for young people to participate in the Canadian program. I think Sara's reporting has been very relevant from the Mexican perspective also, because we had the chance to compare the migrant experience in the US and the migrant experience in Canada. And before Sara's reporting, my knowledge of it, it's that, Canadian migration works much, much better because it's a government program. It's something more organized. People could flew one harvesting season and they come back to Mexico. It's in a way, the perception we had, it was much more dignified. Up to my understanding on Canadian politics, there's no hatred against immigrants as you could find in some places in the US. So most of the policy debate in Mexico is hopefully at one point in the future, we will manage to get a program in the US as it works in Canada, but I'm sure things evolve and your reporting has some challenges for these people, that their basic force is to, the original force and the force I found in this town in Tlaxcala 30 years ago was to have a better standard of living. Now I would say that forces like violence, insecurity, and insecurity is not just organized crime, it's that you are not basically sure where your daily income will come from in the future. That those forces have also come intertwined in the decision of Mexican people to try to sign up for this program.
You talked about participating in this kind of guest worker program being an aspiration for a lot of people, especially in rural Mexico. And so Can you tell us a little bit more about what your choices are? If you are a young person in rural Mexico, maybe with little opportunity for formal education, what are your choices in terms of earning a living, and what is attracting workers or driving them to participate in a program that, you know, obviously separates them from their family for much of the year, for most of their lives?
It's not just formal education. One big problem also is the informal economy, or the chances you have to get a regular job with social security, with medical coverage, a job that it's basically regulated by the law. If we see statistics, that's a very small chance. Around 60% of the Mexican people work in the informal economy. If you see it from a demographical point of view, it's a huge chunk of the economy. Sadly, it's a huge chunk of the economy that does not produce enough wealth for these people. And I'm including in the informal sector all organized crime. It's basically the part of the economy which is not regulated by the law or the tax system. So I could just imagine what what's the life of these people in the daily basis, that you don't have a secure income, not in the long term. You don't have a secure income for next week. So job security, income security, I think plays a big part in this kind of fear. No, remember these words from President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, freedom from want. These people don't have this kind of freedom. They have a real fear from what will be the way they will find to solve the needs of their families.
Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit about the type of work that your reporting has focused on in terms of broader inequalities and inequities and challenges facing the Hispanic community, either in the US and Canada? Give us some examples of the types of issues that you focused on at your publication.
Yeah, it's very challenging because basically the Mexican population in the US are dozens of millions of people. It's a nation within a nation. And you have the migration in Chicago is totally different than the migration in New York or in California. It depends of the roots they have, how many generations they have been there before. For example, all good part of the tourist industry, the restaurant industry in New York depends on migration from Puebla, which is a neighboring state from Tlaxcala, which is a very different type of the migration in Chicago, which people come from Oaxaca, or the migration in California that mostly come to work in the fields. And sadly, most of the reporting, it's focused on violence and insecurity of migrants that are willing to cross to the US without a passport. I have a very touching story. A few years ago, I had the possibility to visit an elementary school in Seattle. And from the school, I was going to the airport. So I had my passport in the breast pocket. And a little girl, she was like 8 years old or something. She told me, "You are a rich Mexican." And I was wondering, how you know that? It was the first approach she had with me. And she said, "Because you have a passport." And said, "And my daddy says that Mexican rich people come to the US with a passport." And he didn't. He couldn't get the passport, so he came here in order to give me a better life. And that conversation, even it was like 10 years ago, this girl must be a teenager now, really give me a sense of the perception how a good part of the Mexican population sees having a passport and the possibility to travel legally to the US or Canada kind of a social entitlement that comes from wealth, no?
Yeah. And you talked about, the freedom from want, which I think is really at the crux of what we're talking about in terms of what is driving migration and the field of opportunity that is available to people to have control over their lives and to live in dignity. And I'm curious your thoughts on what are the biggest challenges in Mexico to achieving that end of that freedom from want?
Well, it's a tough question. Now I would say first, the economy does not produce enough wealth to give a dignified income to these people. Then we had a lot of trouble, and the new government is not helping with economic decisions. Now, in the middle of the pandemic, is the country that has spent less in economic recovery. They think it's kind of these typical Keynesian policies that are working all around the world, and it's like the basic response of a government in a crisis. It's perceived here as neoliberal, no, to help the economy. So now I would say all the hardship that these people have lived through decades, it's just going to become worse and more difficult, and the drive to migrate will be even bigger because you have economic problems, you have a weak state controlling organized crime. With a weak state, violence become kind of a default way to solve conflicts between neighbors, between owners of land in rural areas. So as long as we have like a weak state, the possibilities to maximize your potential as an individual, to guarantee basic income for your family are not going to be here. So I wouldn't be surprised if now more people dream of the possibility to get a job somewhere else. Just try to walk in the shoes of someone that is willing to die to get a decent job. And that's more for the people that are crossing the desert near Arizona or Sonora, which is the living experience of someone that it's risking their own life just to get an 8-hour shift in a restaurant or harvesting a field in California. It's hard for someone like me that has a regular job and basically a lot of things solved in my daily life, just to imagine why I would put my life in risk just to get a very decent basic job opportunity. No?
Yeah. How do you see your reporting as affecting change and tackling those huge challenges that you've just laid out?
Well, we have been very critical when Donald Trump said that we Mexicans will pay for the wall to prevent migration. I would say that sadly he had a point, because now the way the Mexican police force, the federal police force, is behaving with migration from Central America, which has a different dynamic, but it's another source of human tragedy. Actually, Donald Trump was right. We are using our taxes not to build a physical wall, but to use the power of the government, the power of the police force to prevent migration. So our reporting has been focusing a lot on how a government that says that they come from the left credentials are becoming the unofficial migration police force of the Trump government. No?
Thank you so much, Juan, for joining us on World News Day. We really appreciate the insight and perspective that you bring to these issues.